What up, sports fans? Waxon Wednesday. Jake Waxman, Tyler Lavalette, two guys talk sports. Let's rock and roll. Hope you guys are having a good start to the month of August. And just a reminder, I will not be in the studio on Friday for Friday Roundtable. I'll be back the week afterwards. Not this Friday, but the next Friday, I'll be back. I promise, sports fans. I only have just enough time today to do a Wax on Wednesday, but I will not be in the studio for Friday Roundtable, and I apologize for the inconvenience. All right, speaking of sports, so football season's upon us, especially college football season. And the Purdue Boilermakers, they got a couple weeks from now, they'll be playing Ball State at home in West Lafayette to open up the season. There's still one question mark around this Purdue team that I know of. Just one question mark. And that's who is going to be the starting quarterback. So, right now it's a two-man race for the starting quarterback. It's between Ryan Brown and Malachi Singleton. So one of those two guys is going to be the starting quarterback. But it also would not surprise me if both of these two guys play quarterback for Purdue this season, or both see the field. So, here's the thing. I'll start with Malachi Singleton. He's new to Purdue. He transferred from Arkansas after not seeing a whole lot of action. He looks like a very mobile quarterback, and seems to have a very good arm, or at least decent arm strength. So, if he's a guy that could throw the football but also run when he needs to, I think that could be a real benefit to Purdue football. And on Wildcat plays on our offense where it's a RPO, he might be perfect for that kind of situation. The only downside to him is he doesn't have a whole lot of experience in the Purdue system, and I think he's only seen action, or as a freshman he saw action, not as the starter for Arkansas, but as the backup, and only 5 games did he see action, so lack of experience is going to be key there. And then there's Ryan Brown, who transferred from Purdue to North Carolina, and then transferred from North Carolina back to Purdue when he realized things weren't going to work out. So there's that. And Ryan Brown, all right, got a great arm, cannon of an arm, absolutely. Confidence, not afraid to sling it out. And on top of that, he is very, very familiar with how Purdue plays football and offense. Granted, now Barry Odom's the coach, and so the offensive system is going to be different. But in terms of the team chemistry, Ryan Brown is very familiar with the chemistry of Purdue football, which I think makes him the favorite to be the starter to start things off for Purdue football this season. And I think Ryan Brown showed a lot of poise in the games that he played and showed what he could do and had a lot of potential and a lot of talent. I just think the problem was I like Ryan Walters, but he had no idea how to set up an offensive system. And the offensive system that was in place for Purdue just really did not benefit Ryan Brown either. So hopefully who the new offensive coordinator is for Purdue, I need to look that up. But with the new offensive system in Purdue, hopefully that benefits Ryan Brown and helps him out a lot. Because we all need all the help we can get. And new pieces in place, but Ryan Brown's familiar with the team chemistry, and Malachi Brown could bring a lot to the table in terms of dual threat type of situations for Purdue's quarterback situation. So, still a two-man race. It wouldn't surprise me if we have to wait until like 1 week till the season starts to decide who's going to be the starting quarterback for Purdue. But it could be either one of those two guys, and I wish them both well, and hopefully both of them succeed. I think Ryan Brown's going to be the starter based off of experience, but time will tell. We'll find out. And now shifting gears to the second subject. Well, I can't believe we're talking more about NASCAR, but here we are. Austin Hill is in the news again, and me and my brother, on our way back from our fishing trip in Alabama, we were talking about him. So, Austin Hill, he served his 1 week. He got suspended for a week, served his 1 week suspension, and then came back to race at Watkins Glen, and oh dear, he got into another incident. He got into, I believe, Shane Van Gisbergen in the Xfinity Series took him out, and that triggered a very big wreck at the end of the nationwide race at Watkins Glen. By the way, I hope Connor Zilic is okay. That's the man who won the race, and when he went to celebrate, he slipped off his car and injured his back. So I hope he's all right and wish him a speedy recovery first and foremost. But back to Austin Hill. You know, when you have these suspensions are an opportunity for an athlete, or even in this case a race car driver, to kind of learn from what they did that led to from their actions that led to this consequence and how to not repeat it. So one can question whether or not Austin Hill learned anything from his suspension, because clearly it looks like he didn't. Now, granted, this accident was not intentional, okay? It was not or at the very least, it was not on purpose. Like, he didn't mean to wreck Shane Van Gisbergen on purpose. So, not an ill-intent move on Austin Hill's part, but more so just a really, really terrible racing decision. Going into a corner and into a line where the lane is ending. And there's just no way you're going to be... That was into a corner at Watkins Glen where there's just no way you can have two cars running side by side in that moment. So, that was a moment where Austin Hill, I think, needed to lift. And he chose not to and ended up wrecking Shane Van Gisbergen. So, big difference between Indianapolis and Watkins Glen. The move that Austin Hill made this time, not with ill intent, not an intentional wreck move, but really more so just not a great racing decision. Terrible, terrible racing decision. Like, terrible driver IQ in that situation. He needed to lift and chose not to. And, look, I can go into... I'm not going to go into, like, too much into Austin Hill's character and all the details, but I will say Richard Childress, I get it. He's trying to defend his driver, because that's his driver. But in private, he needs to sit down with Austin Hill. He needs to have a talk and say, hey, I need you to be more steady the rest of the season. Because other drivers around this grid are becoming much more wary of your racing actions. And they may not race you with as much kindness as you are hoping. In racing, treat others the way you want to be treated. In racing, it's race others the way you want to be raced. And other drivers are going to be wary around Austin Hill going forward. And there's no doubt that Austin Hill is going to have a much tougher time racing around others because they're quite wary of his intent. Like, all right, he took out Amarola and then took out Shane Van Gisbergen 2 weeks later. Like, that's 2 wrecks he's been involved in the span of 3 weeks. So, I think that Austin Hill and I think Richard Childress needs to sit down and talk with Austin. So, this is not all on Austin Hill, okay? Granted, I think he needs to change some things up, and I think he needs to be more respectful going forward and a little more, cautious going forward. Try not to get involved in wrecks. I know he's an aggressive driver, and Austin Hill's a talented guy, okay? Talented race car driver. But he needs to carry himself better, and like I said, he needs to have better focus in that race car and not get all worked up. I think it also does not help that Richard Childress is just letting him do what he wants, and Richard Childress, they're going into talks about how they're a blue collar team. Yeah, I don't buy that really when you think of it. And then also this in a way, even though NASCAR suspended Austin Hill and rightfully so, this falls on NASCAR a little bit because they need to police aggressive driving a lot more. Like, you dump somebody, penalty. Problem is, it doesn't happen enough. Yes, it did happen in the case of Austin Hill at Indianapolis, but it does not happen anywhere near as much as it should. Like, penalties for aggressive driving should be happening much more often. It doesn't. NASCAR needs to do a better job policing aggressive driving. Because, look, I'm all for rubbing as racing, but there has to be balance across the sport, and even rubbing as racing can go way too far sometimes, and we can't let it go too far too often. And in the case of NASCAR, especially with drivers, not just with Austin Hill, but quite a few drivers across the sport, the rubbing is racing part has gone way too far. And we've got right now what NASCAR has is a generation of drivers that really do not respect each other the same way the veterans of old used to race each other with respect. Yeah, there'd be some instances of aggressive driving and some contacts, but there was a lot more respect in those things. So NASCAR, again, like I said about Austin Hill, talented driver, but needs a better focus. Richard Childress Racing needs to help Austin Hill get achieve that better focus. It needs to help them stay disciplined in that race car. At NASCAR, they need to do a better job policing this kind of racing, without doubt. And that's my take on this whole thing, all right? It's not just an Austin Hill problem, it's a NASCAR problem, all right? And finally, oh my goodness. There was a time where me and Tyler Lavalette were talking about, we were just dreaming about the potential of a Cubs versus Tigers World Series. And this was at a time when both teams were just killing it early on in the season. Well, I am having to pump the brakes on that massively. Right now, I just hope the Cubs make the playoffs, for crying out loud. Because I think they're in the final wild card spot. I think just 3 games ahead of, I believe, the Mets. And they're already 7.5 games back in the NL Central behind Milwaukee. Oh dear. And after losing to the Blue Jays last night, oh boy. Folks, the Cubs are in a rut. Here we go again. The Cubs, they are in it. They are in a pickle. They are in a tailspin that they have just not figured out how to get out of. Since the All-Star break, the Cubs are 10-12. That's not good enough to make, not only to make a run in the postseason, but even just to make the postseason. Because before the All-Star break, the Cubs they're up a few games on the Brewers, and they were looking like not only they would win the NL Central, but they were looking like they would comfortably make the playoffs. Now, oh boy, the Cubs are in a really tight spot. Like, if they don't get out of this slump that they're in, or they don't get out of this rut they're in, they will miss the playoffs. Simple as that. Now, I'm no baseball knower by any chance, okay? I am no baseball knower. But with that being said, from what I can tell, there are 2 things going on, and 2 big reasons why the Cubs are not doing as well as they had been before the All-Star break. One is the bullpen continues to struggle, and even with the additions at the deadline, nothing's really changed with the bullpen. But also, the offense has gone stone cold at the worst point. Like, even Chicago's big hitters like Pete Crow Armstrong are in a rut. Like, they are just in a cold spell and can't get out of it. So, offensive woes and bullpen continuing to struggle, you're going to lose more games than you win. So, right now, the Cubs, somebody's got to... And right now, and I talked a lot about the job Craig Counsell was doing. Well, right now, there's some questions around him. And one could make the case that since the All-Star break, he's been a bit too conservative and hasn't really found a spark for his team to rally around and to get things going. And right now, the Cubs, they need a spark on offense. Like, if they can get back to hitting big-time runs, stop focusing on trying to hit home runs, but, improve your batting average, okay? Hit more balls, and things will take, and, one thing after another. Like, now in the game against the Toronto Blue Jays last night, they had one inning where they had bases loaded. Really good inning offensively. They end up striking it. The batter for the Cubs strikes out, and all the bases are left stranded. And then for the rest of the night, Cubs couldn't get anything going offensively. Got to turn those golden opportunities into big-time moments. So, pretty much, the offense is in a cold spell. And granted, pitching and the bullpen have had their struggles, but you know what? Look, your offense has to do more. This Cubs offense is capable of more. They've shown it through the season. Got to get out of that cold spell. Got to get PCA going. Got to get Ian Happ going. Get your guys going. Suzuki, get him going. Okay, get some fire in those bats. Because if you're the Chicago Cubs, you need it. Because if this keeps up, with the way the bullpen is struggling, and if this offensive dry spell continues going, it'll be yet another year where the Cubs were in a position to make the playoffs and fell apart at the worst time. And that's what it's looking like. And this year, the Cubs really started strong. And yet, Cubs Nation, here we go again. It looks like they are falling apart again at the worst possible time. It looks like Hopefully I'm wrong, but the Cubs are looking like they've run out of fuel. And we still got a lot of but there's still a lot of baseball left to play. All it takes is one offensive spark. Just one spark. Get that offense going again, and you should be able to make the playoffs. Okay, forget the division. You're 7.5 games behind Milwaukee, who's likely going to win it, even though there's still a lot of baseball left. But if the Cubs make the playoffs, thumbs up to that. That's what I'm hoping for right now, because it's way too close for comfort now. Because early in the season, before July, it looked like the Cubs were going to comfortably make the playoffs. As of right now, that is no longer assured. So, two things the Cubs need to do. Get those bats red hot again. Get your all-stars going again. And, alright, if the pitching woes don't solve themselves, then they don't solve themselves. But, got to make some changes into the bullpen as well. Got to do something to give this team a spark. If you can give the offense a spark, the Cubs might just be okay then. I don't think this Cubs team's going to do anything in the postseason, even if they get there, but hey, let's at least get there. A lot of work up ahead for the Cubs, and a lot of questions and not enough answers. Cubs are in a tailspin. Hope they can get out of it. We'll find out. All right, on to this day in sports history. On this day, the 13th of August, 1908, future Baseball Hall of Fame pitcher Cy Young's career is celebrated with a special day in his name in Boston as he pitches briefly for the Red Sox against an all-star team. All right, sports fans, that's all I got for this week's Wax on Wednesday. Just a reminder, I will not be in the studio Friday, but the following Friday, I'll be back. And we'll be ready to rock and roll. Me and Tyler, we'll be back together very soon in the studio. But for now, Family Matters call this week. Without that, again, I apologize for the inconvenience. Without further ado, thanks for watching this week's Wax on Wednesday. Me and Tyler greatly appreciate the support. And anything you want to say in the comments down below, feel free to say. Whatever you wish. For now, this is Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports, wishing you all a good week.